please welcome Gina L Carroll.
We humans are drawn to stories. Our brains prefer to receive information in story form, and so it's no wonder we love to hear and to read about the life stories of others. But have you ever considered your own? Raise your hand if you already know you want to write the stories of your life. Raise your hand if you don't really believe your stories are worth the time and trouble. Raise your hand if you want to tell your life stories, but you never seem to get around to it. I endeavor to convince you that your stories are worth the writing and the telling, and that you must write them ASAP. But I'm also here to tell you how to get it done. I offer the secret sauce for how to get your stories down, started and finished. As a writer, editor, and a self-proclaimed story wrangler, I help people get the stories out of their head and onto the page. And I believe in the depths of my soul that each and every one of you has someone whose life will change because they read your story. Your families, including your children and grandchildren, your colleagues and those protégés coming up behind you, your friends, and that stranger who is grappling with something right now that you have already figured out. But if this is true, then why aren't you writing? Why, of the 81% of the population who wants to write about their lives, according to Forbes magazine, only 3% go on to finish? Because writing is hard. And because your life stories are so big. So much has happened. So much to reckon with. It's overwhelming. It's no wonder you get stuck in the middle, and maybe again in the beginning. But this is what you must remember. That one big life story is really made up of many stories. And all you have to do is focus in on that one most pressing one. That one story that keeps bubbling up. That one most pressing story rattling around in your brain, nagging you to get out. I'd like to tell you about Donna. Donna is an introvert. She's a devoted member of the Between the Lines book club, but she doesn't say very much. The Between the Lines book club is a close-knit group of book-loving friends, mostly retired. But their book meetings are pretty structured. There's always an assigned facilitator. The facilitator plans an agenda. There's a full-course meal. There's parting gifts and the theme of the book. It's a whole vibe. But when the facilitator decides that she's going to ask each member a question about the detail of the book, now Donna is stressed. She doesn't want her bookish friends to think she's not reading the book or that she doesn't appreciate the experience. But the possibility that she has to answer to the details on the spot has her on edge. In 2014, the Between the Lines book club decided to write a book together. Each member was to write one story about their love of reading or their book club experience. Donna decided this was the perfect opportunity to tell that one story she wanted her book club friends to know the most. When you decide to tell your story, you crack yourself open and dare to look inside. When you decide to write your story, you offer up your privacy for the risk-reward of being known, of staking your place in the world, of going on the record. When you decide to write that one most pressing story, that story about disappointment or failure, that one story of abuse or neglect or heartbreak, perhaps that secret story of shame, you remember that it's just one story of many. And so Donna crafted her story which disclosed her challenges with lupus and the memory loss and uncertainty associated with the chronic disease, and the reason she couldn't remember the details and so was silent with her friends. Once she started writing, something was loosed, liberated. It was kind of crazy, she said when I asked her about her writing experience. Once I started writing, I couldn't stop. I had to get it all out. Once you've written that one story, you have wrenched it from yourself, extricated it, and the space it took up in your head, suddenly there's room for your other stories to emerge, spread their arms, and take their rightful place. Those other stories, like what you're good at, like your strength in the face of challenge, like that aha moment right around the corner that you only discovered because you kept going. Those stories start to demand to be told too. And didn't Maya Angelou say, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you? The wonderful book that the Between the Lines Book Club produced was full of stories like this, kernels of truth and insight, the members offering little pieces of themselves to each other and to the world. The most thrilling thing about the book, said another book member, Tony, was that we learned so much about each other when we thought we knew it all. When you write your story, you remind yourself that you've been through some stuff and you've made it through to the other side. Now, you've got some lessons to impart, some revelations. You have a testimony. But why is my message so pressing? Why must you write right now? I'd like to tell you about my beloved grandmother, Clemmy Avery. Sister Avery, as her church friends knew her, was a storyteller and a masterful performer of poems. She was an extraordinary woman, and not just because she was an extraordinary grandmother who taught me all manners of useful and timeless things. She was one of 4 sisters, outnumbered by their brothers in a large family of 20 siblings. They hailed from Arkansas, but they were part of the Great Migration from the south to the north and then west. My grandmother and my beloved grandfather settled in South Central Los Angeles. My father was her only child, and so my brother and I, her only grandchildren. This is pretty much all I know about my grandmother's history. And it's all I know because she was in the habit of sharing the stories of others instead of her own. I think she didn't think her stories were worthy, and that's a shame because she's gone. And I know I could have benefited from knowing her stories. You see, I am pretty certain she wasn't just born with her hardcore work ethic or her deep compassion for others. Her quiet sense of humor and the magical way she could ignore a recipe and still end up with something even more delicious. No, I'm betting that behind all of her gifts and attributes were stories of her trials and tribulations, her joys and triumphs, her failures and successes that made her who she was. How I wish I knew those stories. We will not be here forever, but our stories can endure far beyond us. If we write them, then our future readers we can be sure that our future readers get the facts straight from the source. You are not intended to keep your pressing story to yourself. That is why it's pressing. When you write your story, you just may start something because you invoke your power to shift a perspective, to console a heavy heart, to change a mind, to right a wrong, to ease a pain, to spur an action, to start a fire, and to put one out. Your story can do that now and far beyond this moment. And here is one thing you must know about your story. It is enough. Our stories are a part of something big, the fabric of history and of the human experience. And so, when you are searching for ways to reach your family, to make a strong point, maybe to establish your expertise, you don't have very far to look. You have everything you need in your stories. And that start you need is already in you. That one most pressing story will fuel your writing, start your flow, and bring you home. So go forth, write, share, tell your stories far and wide. The storytelling universe is ready for your arrival. Please, don't keep us waiting. Thank you.
That was Gina L. Carroll.